Hey everyone, welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of Casey Anthony again, this time from the new Peacock series that was just released on, it seems, her behalf. More on that in just a little bit. Let's go ahead and roll the intro first. Today's video is brought to us in part by our long-term supporters over at Audible. If you don't know what Audible is, firstly, well, what? But secondly, it is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment all in one place. Another way to look at it is it's the home of storytelling with all of your audio entertainment in one app. Audible has an incredible selection of audiobooks across every genre, from bestsellers to new releases to celebrity memoirs, mysteries, thrillers, motivation, business, and more. Their library has it all. As an Audible member, you can choose one title per month to keep from their entire catalog for always, including the latest bestsellers and new releases. Members also get full access to a growing selection of audiobooks from Audible originals and podcasts. A book that addresses the intuitive mental processing known as thin slicing, which is how the human brain is able to take in vast amounts of information in a very short amount of time and process it. The book is called Blink. It's written by Malcolm Gladwell, and it provides an interesting and engaging view on the science behind the gut feeling that so many people have, but have difficulty explaining. If you are interested in this channel, you will likely find the book very interesting. So let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, or maybe be inspired, or most certainly be entertained. New members can try it for free for 30 days by visiting audible.com/observe or texting observe to 500-500. Again, that's 30 days for free if you go to audible.com/observe or text observe to 500-500. If you do end up checking out the book, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments of this video. Thank you again to Audible for sponsoring this video, and back to our regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so in case you didn't notice, I'm kind of in a temporary studio here for a little bit, but still wanted to be able to get some content out to you. Today we're talking about Casey Anthony. For those of you who don't know a little bit of the background of that, I'll go ahead and give it to you, and then we can go from there. Casey Anthony's mother, Cindy Anthony, called 911 on July 15th of 2008 to report that her granddaughter, Kaylee Anthony, was missing. Cindy told investigators that she last saw her granddaughter 31 days ago as she was leaving her Orlando home with Casey, her mother. On the same night as the 911 call, Casey told investigators that her daughter had been kidnapped by a babysitter that she identified as Zenaida Fernandez-Gonzalez, aka Zanny the Nanny. The tip led cops on a wild goose chase, and later on, Casey's defense attorney admitted in court that Casey's accusations against Fernandez-Gonzalez were in fact false. According to the Associated Press, Casey was photographed at multiple different bars and clubs in Orlando between June 16th, when Kaylee was last seen, and July 15th. On July 16th of 2008, Casey took investigators to Universal Studios in Orlando, where she claimed to have been working. Her former supervisors, on the other hand, informed the investigators that Casey had in fact not been working there for years. According to CNN, Casey Anthony was arrested on October 14th, 2008 for child neglect, making false statements, and obstruction. According to CNN, on July 17th of 2008, a specifically trained canine detected the scent of human decomposition in the back of Casey Anthony's white Pontiac Sunfire. I could tell that he was working something. Orange County Sheriff's Deputy Jason Forgey later testified, before adding that the dog had lain down in the trunk of the car to indicate to the handler that he had indeed detected the odor of human remains. Casey Anthony was indicted by a grand jury on first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter, and providing false information to law enforcement on the 14th of October in 2008. According to ABC News, her father, George Anthony, testified before the grand jury that indicted Casey. "This is going to be very hard for me to do," he told reporters before his testimony, adding that his focus had always been on my granddaughter and always will be. Kaylee's skeletal remains were discovered by a utility worker less than a half a mile from her home on December 11th, 2008. Orange County Chief Medical Examiner would later determine that her bones showed no sign of trauma and ruled her death to be homicide by an undetermined means, according to ABC News. George Anthony attempted to take his own life at Daytona Beach Hotel on January 23rd, 2009. According to the news outlet, when police found him at the hotel, he was despondent and possibly under the influence of both medication and alcohol, and he had a 5-page note with him. According to the family's attorney, Brad Conway, George was pushed to the brink after his daughter was accused of murdering his granddaughter. Casey Anthony's attorney argued that Kaylee drowned accidentally in the family swimming pool and was discovered by her grandfather, George Anthony, but George did later deny that assertion. According to the Orlando Sentinel, the attorney also claimed in his opening statements that George had sexually abused his daughter, creating an environment which she was forced to then keep the secrets for years and was willing to cover up the alleged drowning. The New York Times reported on July 5th of 2011, after nearly 6 weeks of testimony, that a jury took less than 11 hours to acquit Casey Anthony of murdering her daughter. Casey, who never testified in her own defense, had faced the death penalty but was only convicted of giving false information to law enforcement officers. After the verdict was read, Casey sobbed quietly. "The best feeling I have today is I know I can go home and my daughter will ask me, 'What did you do today?' and I can say, 'I have saved a life.'" That is what Casey Anthony's attorney later told reporters of the verdict. Casey was sentenced to 4 years behind bars for lying to police, but was given credit for time served and released just 12 days after the verdict, according to ABC News. Now we are going to be looking at this new documentary introduced by Peacock, which seems to be giving platform exclusively to Casey Anthony despite everything that seems to be pointed against her. We are going to take an in-depth look at this documentary to be able to see if there are any nonverbal tells of authenticity or possible deceit, anything that we can see that might add a little bit more information to this very intriguing mystery. But that's enough talking. Let's go ahead and just dive right into the video itself.
All right, Kayla, do you want to sleep?
I would love to. Casey interview, A, B, C marker, soft sticks.
Why talk to me now when you're not getting creative control?
I just need someone to be willing to listen.
Okay. You can go ahead and pause here and make a couple notes. There are a few things that I want to note non-verbally that she's doing that you can just see, and these are very common to see before interviews, and these are the preening gestures that you notice coming out. That's just being aware of visual appearance and wanting to make sure that it is visually appealing. Now, this also comes out subconsciously in other areas, not necessarily in here, but for the general public, it'll come out especially in areas of attraction, the preening gestures, or just even being aware of one's own appearance in an area. So say it's a job interview or something along those lines, you can see those preening style gestures to come out pretty quickly. Just means somebody's aware of how they look. So she does those, and then we're into these interesting questions pretty quickly. We get the question of why are you speaking to us even though you don't have creative freedom? And we have a lip compression and shrug in there, which means I'm not really sure about what I'm saying here, which if that's the case, I don't think that this was perhaps Anthony's best decision to move forward with this. But then she follows it up with, I just want somebody to be able to listen, more or less. And there's a shrug and a head shake no in there. There's not a lot of certainty in that delivery. And now whether or not that's because she knows that this isn't like it's not going to really fly regardless, or because it's not authentic, it's difficult to say. There's just not a lot of certainty behind the words that she's delivering there. So let's continue watching.
And I've spent the last 10 years making sure that I knew who I was, that I started to cope with this loss, and that I had something to say to make my daughter proud, but also to honor her properly. And this is part of that.
It's hard because
Okay, I want to pause that here and just make a note of something that she says verbally here, that this is centered around making her daughter proud. And I don't necessarily actually buy that, largely because at least from what I've observed so far, it has not been about Kaylee on any level. It's really been quite about Casey and how Casey is quite innocent in all of this. You'll be able to see this more unpacked in just a moment, but I do find it fascinating that even though this is clearly centered around trying to clear Casey Anthony's name, she herself is trying to present it as, I'm trying to make Kaylee Anthony proud. Fascinating little point of manipulation there, but let's go ahead and keep watching.
It's hard because 1,000 questions go through my head. I'm responsible for answering everyone in the world's questions about her, about what happened.
Okay, I'm gonna add in here already. Now, if you watched the previous very short video on this, then we made note of this before, the aggression that's coming out. And the fascinating thing about that is that it doesn't always seem to fit. Now, along with the aggression that we're seeing, then, if, like I said, if you watch that last video, we're seeing some contempt in the corners of the nose here. We're also seeing a lot of anger and upset frustration up here in the glabella as it's wrinkling and pulling downwards and inwards. So we're seeing that action come out there for sure, but then we're also seeing this humorless smile come in at the beginning of it, as it seems as though Casey is humored by people wanting certain specific things that she doesn't feel like she can do, or perhaps that it's not her responsibility to do. Regardless, we're seeing that dry humor come in, and it's not an authentic display of mirth, obviously, but it is showing up here. We're being able to get a little bit of an idea as just to how Casey Anthony is behaving in this specific interview. Let's continue forward.
I still don't know. What happened to Kaylee? I know what I'm afraid of. I know what eats at me at night. I know what eats at me day after day. Because I know what I lived through. The only person in this world that matters to me still is my...
Okay, I'm going to pause it here and make a note of something that I'm finding interesting about the display of perhaps pain or frustration. The emotional display that's trying to be presented here is not synchronized. And that's what I'm finding mostly fascinating, is that it's largely focusing exclusively in the upper half of the face up here. So really across the brows and the eyes are really trying to convey this tragic feeling. But the lower half of the face isn't really conveying that tragic feeling whatsoever. So we're getting this feeling of something feels forced or disconnected, and that would be why you can see that coming up across there. Now, this could be nerves because it's an interview, and it could be a very important interview to her, but it could also be an indicator that this is a forced or faked emotion, so we should pay attention to that. Now, Casey is not unfamiliar with lying, and that will become very, very, very obvious to us as we continue through this, but let's just keep watching.
To me still is my daughter. But I'm still defending the fact that I didn't hurt her. I live it every single day. And no one can ever tell me I should just get over the fact that my daughter isn't here and I've been blamed for her being gone. It was the right guilty verdict.
Okay, so with that seemed to be fairly synchronized, that outrage. Now that actually can make sense even contextually for both sides. If she is innocent, then that outrage obviously makes sense. But if she is guilty, there is one area that many people will be able to find a way to tap into genuine emotion, and that's in the realm of self-pity. Even narcissists can find this as well. If it comes around to a way to be able to pity oneself, then genuine emotion can be evoked and often will be. And this will often be done in interviews across everywhere, as you see people, once they can find a way to talk about how hurt they themselves are, then genuine emotion will come out. And what's unfortunate is that so often people will then watch the interview, see the genuine emotion, and then afterwards remember just that there was genuine emotion, but not remember what it was centered around, and incorrectly attribute it to something like, say, for instance, we're going to start watching Casey's story, and now we've seen her cry. And now, just keep in mind, after we're finished, she didn't cry about her story. She cried about how difficult things have been for her. So that's an important thing to note. It is a manipulation technique. Whether it's a conscious one or not sure, but let's just keep watching. Looks like we're about to start unpacking Casey's story.
Guilty verdict. I did lie to law enforcement. I admitted that I lied to law enforcement. So I am a convicted liar. It's the truth.
And what is your relationship to truth and lying today?
I'm a little too honest. I'm blunt. I'm direct.
I don't buy that at all. There's a number of reasons for that. One, just speaking pattern-wise, Casey Anthony has shown throughout all of her life that she is very, very used to and accustomed to lying. So the fact that she's now trying to say, no, right Now, though, now I'm not lying. It's very, very much just the boy who cried wolf kind of storyline there. So on that level, just alone, not really, really buying it. However, she does admit, so we can assume that the question before was something centered around lying. So she admits that she lied to police. That's good. That's important. But she tries to slough it off. And the way that she tries to do this is by adding some shrugs in there, some nonchalant shrugs, exposes her neck in there, does a little bit of contempt in there as well with the side of her mouth, a little bit of lip shrugging as well. All of this is to amplify this. It doesn't really matter that much. It's not a big deal, not a big deal. Really trying to downplay it. Lying to the police about what she lied about is a massive deal. It should not be downplayed, but she still tries to. And then along with that, she tries to play this new scene where she's saying that she's just so blunt, too truthful even. It's almost comedic. It feels almost as if she's fully pendulum from like, yeah, I lied full on to the police, now pendulum over to like, I am almost a saint. But then along with that, she has a little bit of difficulty holding eye contact as we see a pretty long forced blink in there in the middle of that. Just, I don't buy that. And then along with that, the shoulder shrugging in there can indicate some of the perhaps lack of certainty behind her words, at least discomfort with it. If it's not uncertainty, it is defensiveness. There was enough of a red flag there that I wouldn't buy that. I would definitely circle back around, want to see if there's a way that we can actually catch out a more authentic answer than what was delivered right there.
Almost painfully so.
Today, would you say Casey is an honest person?
Yes.
How honest?
I think she's very truthful today. I trust her so much that I trust her with my research, with my invoices.
So in the past 10 years, you've never caught her.
This is striking me as interesting. So the initial response, very much like the yes. The question may have caught him off guard, perhaps somewhat kind of coaxing, leaning back, but then the synchronized nod afterwards does lend me to believe that it was being more authentic. But then right after that, everything else seems to fall apart. So this initial yes was definitely there, very prevalent. And then we start seeing an over-the-top display of fidgeting. As you can see, his shoulders moving about as his arms are definitely moving. You can tell that he's posturally changing. He's also shaking his head no lightly. He's also having some verbal difficulty in there. And he words it very specifically that he finds her very trustworthy today. Like, he mentions the word today. Now, in these sorts of situations, verbal patterning is actually very important. So the fact that it's mentioned today, I would not overlook that. That's an important thing to note. And from those two displays there were more things showing a red flag of perhaps there's more that needs to be looked at as far as Casey Anthony's reliability. But let's just keep watching.
10 years, you've never caught her in an out-and-out lie.
Never. Not in 10 years or however long it's been. Yeah, I'm pretty good at catching lies. It's kind of my job. And she's very honest.
He's not certain with that answer, with those lip compressions and mouth shrugs, and even the aggression and tension that came into his voice while he's very honest. He knows that what he's saying would be considered a hot take. And then after that, he's got his uncertain defensive nonverbal communication creeping out, which fair. And I'm wondering on what level he's thinking about why he's saying that a person who has so regularly been characterized by deceit that they are this ultra honest person for the past 10 years. It's just fascinating. Even his nonverbal communication doesn't really seem to line up with amplifying that, but let's go ahead and let's keep watching.
When I lied during this and even prior to, there was always at least some part of the truth that was a part of the lie. I did work at Universal for a very long time. And yeah, Sawgrass Apartments, that's where Annie Downing lived. A kernel of truth within the lie.
And that is just an indicator of a burst liar. Somebody who does know how to lie well will always include these portions of truth. Now, the reason for that also works, even perhaps subconsciously for the liar, is that you are going to feel more comfortable telling a story that has partial truth to it than if it's completely made up. So non-verbally speaking, that will also allow your body to be more natural during that. So she's just admitting to being a good liar or knowing techniques to help make lying easier, which are developed by people who repeatedly lie. So being able to know that and recognize that is not really helping her case on any level here. But let's see how she tries to play that.
So let's go back to the beginning.
With a lip compression, shrug, and some contempt in there as well. Once again, but not much I can do about it. No big deal. Let's kind of just move on by it. It's a big deal. And we can't just move on by it. It's pretty important. So let's keep watching.
Beginning. July 16, 2008. The day that Kaylee's kidnapping is reported.
Hello? Hi. Can you tell me a little bit what's going on?
So all that I want to point out at that specific moment there was that Casey did a very substantial, obvious, overt preening gesture and then also postural change. This is a shift in tone and overall energy in the interview, and that's indicated non-verbally speaking. I guarantee you that before this question was asked by the interviewer, there was a postural change that indicated that this was going to have a shift in tone. So with that coming up there, we're just seeing that that's a natural flow between the two of those. Let's see how this 911 call goes out.
My daughter's been missing for the last 31 days.
What are you thinking and feeling on that call? There's no emotion.
There's nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's very weird.
This is just a fascinating approach that Casey's trying to take here. It's just, yeah, this is wrong. This is incorrect. So what they're noticing is the lack of any intonation. There's no emotional reflection in the vocal cords. Obviously, it's all just audio, so nothing to go off of with body language side of things. But non-verbally speaking, even during that conversation, there were no indicators that I could hear personally of agitation. The sentence was delivered very flat, and nothing to indicate any level of alarm, which is alarming considering the content of the sentence. And then Casey's response to this is that, yeah, that was really weird, and that's simply just not good enough. We knew that. That's what everybody has been saying. We're not asking you to confirm or deny whether it's weird. It's not the point of this. So let's see what she actually does after this massive mouth blocking gesture that she's doing here.
I was so numb during so much of that.
Who has her? Do you have a name? Her name is Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. She's been my nanny for about 1.5 years, almost 2 years.
I did meet someone named Zenaida Fernandez Gonzalez. She was babysitter, was the nanny. All of that's true. Was not my nanny, was not my babysitter.
And there we have an example of how a lie is much easier to tell when you are using facets of truth. And here she addresses it so incredibly nonchalantly that it does cue us in. This is very regular behavior for her. She's very used to doing this. So if she's so used to doing this, what world does she expect us to live in that a documentary then with her more or less crying wolf is going to go well this time around if every other time that she's done so has been found deceitful? So we're already walking into this suspicious, but trying to look at that and recognize that and try to be less biased in light of that is still very, very important and moving forward, because considering extra factors that we might not know, we do have to be careful because maybe there is something that is just missed yet. But let's keep watching.
So at the time we're pulling up here,
a lot of self-preening gestures from Casey. Just a substantial amount of self-preening gestures. Then these are also signs of agitation, running the fingers through the hair like that, especially that over-the-top kind of display of it there. That can be a sign of agitation, self-soothing, and self-preening as well. I get the feeling that Casey Anthony is lightly self-absorbed with at least how she's appearing, at least in this interview. Now, once again, interview, it's going on TV, going on streaming services. Maybe she just really, really wants to look good. But at very least, we know that she's very highly focused on her own self-appearance. Along with that, she is at least a repeat liar, maybe not a pathological one. Seems to be fairly pathological, but at least a repeat liar, so much so that she has systems to work through with it. We're getting an idea as to who Casey is. Let's continue.
With the cops, you believe what about where Kaylee is?
She's okay. That's what I believed the entire time, not just with the cops. Every day that I've sat in jail up until the day she was found. Every day.
Help us understand, why were you lying to the cops?
I lied to everyone because that was my whole life up to that point.
Okay, important line here. So already we're seeing anger and aggression coming out to being questioned about some of these things. Now, this could be residual anger. She's been questioned for some years about these things, so she's still angry about that. But this is supposed to be giving her voice. So why is she showing this aggression and anger here? It doesn't fit, and it's poorly displayed. It doesn't go well with what she is at least trying to manipulate the audience into feeling during this. So that anger is not good. It does, however, enforce that perhaps there's something that's being picked at and getting close to that you should continue to hone in on. People will get angry whenever you start getting close to the truth. She also then, right after that, just admitted that lying was her way of life, realizes this is a terrible thing to say up to that point. And then we're just left having to hold this belief that somebody who has now even admitted that their life has character was characterized by lying, that up to this point, and suddenly that just stopped. And that doesn't happen psychologically. So I highly doubt it. But perhaps, along with that, during that time, we're seeing a lot of no shaking in there. The aggression is still very, very consistent, but a lot of that micro no shake no, and there might be a desynchronization between the two. Either that or it is a reflection of the negative emotions that are also being expressed, but this isn't looking super, super hot for Casey. Let's continue.
Acting like everything's okay, but knowing nothing was okay. I've had years of therapy, and I'm trying to analyze my own behavior and explain my own behaviors.
That is also a coping mechanism for therapeutic processes as well. That overanalyzation of one's own experience can be coping. So that's not necessarily a good thing. It's a good thing that she's going to therapy. That is important for sure. What I already see developing here is this tendency to victimize oneself through using the mode of therapy. Let's see how that plays out, see if she goes down that path as well.
All of this is a reaction to trauma.
So this line is fascinating to me because technically it's not technically untrue. You can't say that she's not reacting to trauma and doing some of these things. However, that being said, the trauma doesn't excuse the reaction that was done and to the severity that it was done. This is a pretty substantial thing to have it be your daughter's life at stake and it still be something that you're working off of. This isn't a smaller thing. So she's immediately trying to hang all of this on to trauma, which there is that possibility that there is a large piece of trauma that we're not aware of. That also being said, it doesn't excuse many of the actions that were done. It just gives the reason behind it, not an excuse for it. Let's go ahead and continue watching. Let's see how trauma has made her do all of these really interestingly terrible things.
On the surface, my family was typical. Mother, father, son, and daughter. Your standard middle-class, white, American family. My mom was a nurse. My father was a former cop. When we moved to Florida, he was in security. The outside world saw this perfect little family. And there were moments of that, for sure.
Okay, so with this, what I'm hearing as she's describing her family is a lot of aggression, especially even in the syllables that she has in her words. American family, there's an aggression and force behind the words that is interesting. Why is that agitation there? It leads me to believe that whatever's about to come next, which it also sounds even verbally, it sounds like this is about to take a sharp turn, but with that in there, that is a negative connotation behind that. There's some sort of anger or hostility that she has in regards to her family. And now she says that there were some times that there were good moments, and then there was a spike in pitch and tone and everything along those lines. Now, that spike in pitch and tone can be an indicator of agitation, and the chances are is that, yes, her family appeared to be functional to people on the outside, but was rather dysfunctional behind closed doors. That's not unheard of whatsoever. That also being said, just because a family is dysfunctional, it doesn't excuse any of the behaviors that have been done. And that's what is going to be used here, is because family dysfunctional, I do bad things. And that doesn't excuse bad things being done.
There were moments of that, for sure. But that wasn't the reality. Our life at home was a lie. Telling the truth, especially in our house, wasn't allowed. It all comes back to my dad. He was a...
I'm going to go ahead and pause it there to make note of now this new area of blame shifting that has been done here, to where now Casey has shifted all of the responsibility to the parents as to why she is a liar. Now, there is definitely a large portion of responsibility to the nurture side of things, that the nature and nurture can help create the person. Sure, there is a level of responsibility there. It is not the entire responsibility of the parents that Casey became a liar. That's simply not the case. There are still conscious decisions being made each time. That also being said, it does make it more difficult if there's a family system that does lend towards deceit being more beneficial than negative in whatever situation, especially if it comes down to like self-conservation, anything like that. Let's continue watching this.
He was a man who was incapable of ever telling anyone the truth. My father wanted the world to believe that he was the patriarch of the family, that he was supporting our family, financially and otherwise. There were so many things that he didn't want us to see. My father was trying to hide that he wasn't working. My mother was the true matriarch, was the sole breadwinner. She worked 14 to 16-hour days to not only keep our lights on, but to keep food on the table. My mom had found out that he had taken $60,000 out of her retirement. He claims at first it was a Nigerian Ponzi scheme, and then that he had gambled away the money. The story kept evolving.
I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and I might actually wrap up this portion of the video here soon. If you would like me to continue on this, I have more footage to be able to work through, and I think it would make an excellent second video. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it here and draw a comparison that is very fascinating. Is that now we're listening to her talk about her dad and how he displayed, how he behaved, and how consistently he lied. So there was at least this parental imprint that did exist there. Father lies a lot, the children will pick up on that. There are some details that it seems as though she wouldn't have known as a child, but obviously there's been time and she's probably talked to various people to find out some of this stuff that she couldn't have known at the time. However, that also being said, we're seeing this modeling of bad behavior from a parent to a child, and that child taking that behavior while having disgust for it, using very, very, very much the same behavior throughout the rest of their life, as they found out that it allows them to take advantage of people and get what they want. So Casey continually changed her story to the police about Kaylee, just as her father continually changed his story about this money issue. And Casey says, oh, well, my dad always lies and that story always changes. And it's so ironic to me that it's happening in the middle of her story changing again after she's lied so many times before. So we still have some stuff to discover here. There are some red flags that are popping up already. Seems as though there's areas that could be forced. It seems as if it's desynchronized. There's aggression that doesn't seem to fit. There are some areas where you can only see emotion on the top half of the face rather than the bottom half in a synchronized profile. There are all of these red flags that do pop up, but they're all small. There's nothing to be able to say, well, obviously she's completely innocent or completely guilty. There's still a lot to be able to go through. If you would like me to be able to continue the series, please let me know by commenting in the section below or liking. You know what? You know this. We've all been on YouTube for a minute. Do the things that you like to do. I appreciate them. If you want to see more, I do appreciate your subscriptions as well. Thank you again to the sponsors of this video. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for today. My name is Logan, and you have been oh so awesome as you always are, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.